The dawn of the modern age in England was not marked by sudden explosions of glory, but by the quiet, relentless rhythm of change. Across the rolling hills and bustling towns, the whispers of industry began to stir, signaling a transformation that would reshape both the land and its people. The Industrial Revolution, emerging in the late 18th century, was less a single event than a tide, a steady, powerful current carrying society from agrarian simplicity into a world of machines, coal, and iron. In the northern towns, the streets filled with smoke from factories that seemed to rise like stone mountains against the sky. Children, their small hands hardened by labor, ran alongside the great wheels of machinery, their laughter entwined with a metallic clatter that became the soundtrack of progress. Women bent over looms worked tirelessly, their patience and endurance a quiet defiance against exhaustion. Men labored from dawn until dusk, their sweat fueling the relentless engines of commerce. It was an era that demanded resilience, and yet it also demanded reflection, a recognition that innovation, while powerful, comes at a human cost. Amid the roar of machinery, thinkers and philosophers pondered the moral dimensions of this new age. Adam Smith's words on the invisible hand of markets reminded people that individual ambition, when guided by ethical principles, could serve the collective good. At the same time, social reformers questioned the fairness of a society in which wealth and power were concentrated while so many suffered. The tension between progress and justice became the heartbeat of England's transformation, teaching a lesson that is as relevant today as it was then. The pursuit of advancement must be balanced with conscience and care. The spread of industrialization brought England into a position of unprecedented influence. Its factories produced textiles, metals, and goods that would travel across oceans, connecting continents in a web of commerce. The empire expanded, its reach touching India, Africa, the Caribbean, and beyond. Yet, with power came responsibility, and with responsibility came the shadow of exploitation. Colonial dominance brought wealth, but it also brought moral and ethical dilemmas that would echo through generations. Stoicism, in the lessons of endurance and reasoned action, became not just philosophy but necessity, guiding those who sought to navigate the complexities of empire and innovation. In cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and Liverpool, the rhythm of modern life grew louder. Streets swelled with workers, markets overflowed with goods, and the engines of trade hummed ceaselessly. At night, the glow of gas lamps illuminated streets crowded with ambition, poverty, and determination alike. The stark contrasts, luxury alongside deprivation, wealth beside hardship, revealed the paradox of progress. Humanity had gained power over nature and its own production, yet it faced new moral and social challenges. Endurance, prudence, and discipline, qualities celebrated by Stoic thinkers, were required not only by individuals but by society as a whole. The 19th century was also a time of awakening. Movements for social reform gained momentum. The Chartists demanded political representation for the working classes, insisting that justice could not wait for the slow turn of fortune or circumstance. Education expanded, offering knowledge as a tool for empowerment. Women, increasingly visible in public life, challenged traditions that had long confined them to domestic spheres. England's modern identity began to take shape not simply in factories and parliaments, but in the ethical deliberations, the moral courage, and the disciplined action of its citizens. Yet, the path was never smooth. Revolutions abroad, economic crises at home, and social unrest reminded the nation that progress is fragile, and that resilience must be nurtured. The Stoic principle of focusing on what is within one's control became a guiding light for both leaders and ordinary people. Patience, reflection, and steadfastness were not abstract ideals. They were the tools with which individuals endured hardship, adapted to change, and contributed to the moral fabric of society. As England approached the 20th century, the shadow of global conflict began to loom. Industrial might had transformed the economy and society, but it had also created new vulnerabilities. Nations now stood on the edge of a world shaped by rapid communication, industrialized warfare, and international alliances. In these years, England's citizens were called to develop not only their technical skills and political acumen but their moral resilience, for the storms ahead would test courage, endurance, and the Stoic strength of character. The story of modern England, in these opening decades, is thus one of dualities: progress and cost, power and responsibility, endurance and reflection. The Industrial Revolution did not merely reshape landscapes, it reshaped human life itself, demanding that individuals and society cultivate patience, courage, and wisdom. These qualities would prove essential in the coming years, as the nation confronted wars, social upheavals, and the ethical dilemmas of empire. Stoicism, in its quiet insistence on measured action and moral integrity, became the undercurrent guiding England through its journey from agrarian society to industrial power. The first decades of the 20th century were a time of anticipation and apprehension. England, emerging from the profound transformations of industrialization, now faced a world that was changing faster than its own imagination could grasp. Cities that had once been defined by chimneys and factories now grappled with the promises and perils of modernity. Social reform moved slowly, yet inevitably, as voices long silenced demanded recognition and justice. Education, public health, and labor rights became the instruments through which society sought balance amidst rapid change. Then came the cataclysm of the First World War. Unlike any conflict before, it drew the nation into a vortex of unprecedented scale. Trenches scarred the landscapes of France and Belgium, while the echo of artillery fire haunted the minds of soldiers who marched willingly into the jaws of danger. The Stoic lesson of endurance revealed itself most clearly here. Courage was not simply a matter of heroism, but of sustaining one's reason and integrity under conditions that sought to annihilate both. Ordinary men, conscripted from factories, farms, and towns, embodied the principle that life's trials are to be met with steadfastness and reflection. Back home, the war reshaped the social fabric. Women stepped into roles previously reserved for men, running factories, offices, and transport systems with unmatched discipline. Their competence challenged long-held assumptions about gender, setting the stage for partial suffrage in 1918. The nation, weary yet resolute, recognized that progress often arises from necessity, and that human dignity must be defended not merely by laws, but by daily acts of courage and responsibility. The post-war years, however, were far from peaceful. Economic instability, labor unrest, and political uncertainty tested the resilience of England's citizens. The Great Depression struck with cruel intensity, undermining confidence and exposing vulnerabilities in a society that had believed itself secure. Yet, amidst hardship, the human spirit persisted. Stoicism taught that control lies not over external circumstances but over one's response to them. Communities adapted, families endured, and leaders sought pragmatic solutions to systemic crises. The moral and practical lessons of endurance became a blueprint for navigating adversity. The interwar period also witnessed the rise of international tensions that would culminate in the Second World War. Extremist ideologies spread across Europe, challenging liberal democracies and demanding vigilance from states that valued freedom and stability. England's leadership, guided by both foresight and stoic reflection, had to balance diplomacy with preparedness. Political debates, economic reforms, and cultural movements all contributed to shaping a society that could endure the approaching storm. Education and culture became instruments not only of knowledge but of resilience. Literature, theatre, and public discourse encouraged reflection on human nature, ethics, and the consequences of power. Citizens were called to develop not only technical or professional skills but the moral compass necessary to guide a nation through turbulent times. The lessons of the past, the Industrial Revolution, imperial expansion, and social reform, offered perspective. Endurance, reason, and measured action were essential to the survival and growth of both individuals and society. The Stoic principle that external events cannot be controlled, only one's response to them, became increasingly relevant. Families facing unemployment, soldiers returning from the horrors of war, and communities confronting political uncertainty had to cultivate patience, courage, and reflection. The philosophical became practical. The abstract became lived experience. England, as a society, learned that resilience is built not in comfort, but in the measured confrontation with adversity. By the late 1930s, the shadow of conflict once again loomed. The lessons of World War I, courage, endurance, and reflection, were revisited and reinforced as the nation prepared to face challenges of even greater scale. The balance of power, the fragility of peace, and the imperative of ethical leadership demanded that society act with both wisdom and discipline. The Stoic understanding that life's trials are inevitable, and that virtue lies in measured response, guided both citizens and statesmen alike. Thus, England entered the Second World War with the hard-earned wisdom of the previous decades. The industrial cities, now centers of production, supported both the war effort and the social cohesion necessary to endure the hardships ahead. The moral, social, and philosophical lessons of the modern era had been internalized. Endurance in labor, reflection in policy, courage in action, and integrity in leadership. These qualities, cultivated over generations, would prove indispensable in the trials to come. The Second World War tested England like no era before. Though the Blitz cast a shadow of fire and smoke over London, Coventry, and other cities, transforming familiar streets into landscapes of uncertainty. Yet, amid the devastation, the quiet dignity of ordinary citizens shone brightest. Queues for rations stretched around corners, children were evacuated to the countryside, families sought safety while maintaining their composure. The Stoic principle of enduring hardship with grace became a daily practice, lived in the small acts of perseverance that defined the nation's character. Leadership, too, was called upon to exemplify Stoic resilience. Winston Churchill's speeches were more than words, they were calls to fortitude, reminders that courage is not merely heroic action but sustained commitment to duty in the face of relentless adversity. Every citizen, from factory worker to office clerk, became a participant in a collective enterprise of endurance, each individual choice contributing to the moral and practical strength of society. The end of the war marked both relief and challenge. Cities lay in ruins, economies strained, and the empire that had defined England for centuries was entering its final phase of transformation. Yet, in these circumstances, the nation embraced the Stoic lesson that external circumstances are beyond one's control, but response is not. Reconstruction required discipline, vision, and collective responsibility. The National Health Service was established, embodying the principle that a society's strength is measured by its care for the vulnerable. Housing, education, and social welfare became central to rebuilding not only infrastructure but the moral fabric of England. The decades that followed were characterized by rapid social and economic change. Industrial decline, the rise of service economies, and the expansion of technology reshaped the daily lives of citizens. Immigration brought cultural diversity, enriching society while challenging traditional assumptions about identity. Social reforms, including expanded education, civil rights, and gender equality, reflected a growing awareness that justice and progress are not passive achievements. They are cultivated through sustained effort, reflection, and ethical action. Political life, too, reflected these tensions. Debates over Europe, national identity, and economic policy required measured judgment. Stoicism's emphasis on reflection before action became vital, as decisions carried consequences for millions. The population learned that patience, reasoned deliberation, and moral courage were as essential in peacetime as they had been in wartime. Society, in essence, was engaged in a continuous exercise in endurance, adapting to changing circumstances while maintaining core principles of integrity and responsibility. Technological advancement accelerated through the late 20th century, altering communication, work, and culture. Television brought events into homes in real time, reshaping public perception and social engagement. Computers and early internet technologies began to transform business and education. In this environment, the Stoic ideal of self-discipline found new relevance. Individuals had to navigate information, opportunity, and distraction with clarity of purpose. The challenges of modern life required not only technical skill but also moral reflection, patience, and measured action. Through these decades, England's history demonstrated the interplay of endurance and reflection. Each generation faced its own trials, from economic downturns to social unrest, from global conflicts to internal political debates. The Stoic ethos of focusing on what is within one's control, accepting the inevitability of hardship, and acting with virtue guided the nation through complex circumstances. Ordinary citizens, as well as leaders, participated in this continuous practice of resilience, ensuring that progress was sustained without losing sight of ethical responsibility. By the late 20th century, England had evolved into a society defined by both continuity and change. Its institutions, infrastructure, and cultural heritage reflected centuries of accumulated wisdom, while its people confronted new challenges with the enduring lessons of history. Economic globalization, technological innovation, and shifting social norms required constant adaptation, yet the principles of reflection, endurance, and measured action remained as relevant as ever. England's modern story, though marked by uncertainty, illustrated the capacity of a society to endure, adapt, and thrive when guided by ethical reflection and Stoic discipline. The 21st century arrived with both promise and uncertainty. England, a nation forged through centuries of resilience, now faced challenges unlike any before. Globalization accelerated trade, travel, and communication, creating opportunities and connections, yet simultaneously exposing the vulnerabilities of an interdependent world. Technology, once a distant marvel, became embedded in daily life. The internet, mobile devices, and instant communication transformed the ways people worked, learned, and interacted. With these tools came both empowerment and distraction, demanding discipline and reflection from those navigating the currents of modernity. Brexit referendum, a historic referendum, revealed the complexities of governance, identity, and collective decision-making. Citizens confronted the consequences of centuries of history, empire, and globalization, realizing that progress is rarely straightforward and that choices carry long-reaching effects. The Stoic principle of focusing on what is within one's control became a vital lesson. Individuals cannot dictate the tides of politics, but they can engage thoughtfully, act responsibly, and endure uncertainty with courage and integrity. Soon after, the COVID-19 tested England in ways both practical and philosophical. Hospitals faced unprecedented strain, businesses shuttered, and daily life was interrupted on a scale previously unimaginable. Yet, amid these challenges, Stoic virtues, resilience, patience, and discipline manifested vividly. Healthcare workers displayed courage and endurance in the face of personal risk. Citizens adapted to restrictions, finding new ways to maintain community, education, and connection. Families, though isolated, cultivated understanding, reflection, and mutual support. England's response demonstrated that endurance, ethical responsibility, and calm deliberation are timeless tools in navigating crises. Social change continued to shape the nation. Multiculturalism expanded the richness of communities, gender equality progressed, and debates about climate, technology, and governance required foresight and moral clarity. Climate change and environmental concerns reinforced a Stoic truth. While the world is not fully controllable, actions and discipline can create lasting impact. Economically, England transitioned from traditional industries towards services, finance, and technology. Automation and artificial intelligence reshaped work and daily life, demanding adaptability and ethical judgment. Education systems increasingly emphasized not just knowledge, but responsibility and resilience, preparing citizens for uncertainty with reasoned action and moral clarity. Culturally, England continues to thrive as a centre of arts, literature, and innovation. Music, cinema, literature, and digital media reflect both historical legacy and modern identity. Each creative expression embodies endurance, imagination, and reflection, qualities aligned with Stoic thought. As England moves deeper into the 21st century, challenges such as technological disruption, political polarization, environmental crises, and inequality demand both practical and moral responses. Yet the lessons of history remain clear. Patience, discipline, courage, and reasoned reflection provide guidance through uncertainty. Looking forward, global interconnection and technological acceleration will continue to reshape life. Citizens and leaders alike must balance ambition with responsibility and respond with calm, measured action. England's modern journey shows that adversity is inevitable, but response defines outcome. Ultimately, modern England is not just a sequence of events but a story of human resilience, moral reasoning, and enduring virtue. From industrial smoke to the digital age, the central lesson remains unchanged. True strength lies not only in power or wealth, but in reflection, discipline, and ethical endurance. History becomes instruction, guiding every generation toward purpose, integrity, and courage.